Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. For today's video, I'm going to be breaking down one of my favorite altcoins that I have invested a significant amount of money in, expecting it to do very well over this cycle. I've talked a lot about why I believe layer 2s are my favorite investments, and I've talked a lot about Arbitrum and Optimism being the focal point of that. For today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys my third favorite pick inside of that narrative, the one that I think is probably the biggest sleeper inside of the market that most people are overlooking. It's not listed on many centralized exchanges yet, but I think that this thing has so much upside potential for when it does. So I'm going to break it down and explain exactly why I think this one's going to be so profitable moving forward into this next cycle, and how we can look to be early and prepared before this rally takes place. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, now before we jump into the altcoin analysis today, I wanted to quickly talk a little bit about Bitcoin. I believe we've identified a new range that we needed to update from, and so now that we've entered, or what I should say exited, our prior range, we're now going to be looking at something like this. Now, we have a range high up here, and this is the same range high that we ultimately rallied to at almost 45,000. It's about 44,750, and we're currently just under that resistance right now. Now, I do believe that what we're going to be looking at is a retest of this mid-range, and from this mid-range, it's kind of more of an entire area than you would say just one specific line. So it's acted as resistance and support. It's been a very big pivot point for both resistance and support, and inside of our most recent breakout, we can see that this was kind of the same level that we held as support before we got the most recent move to those range highs. So when we're comparing all of these, I think that this is going to be the most obvious area of support that we're going to be coming back in contact to as we're starting to see Bitcoin make a little bit of resistance up here. So as we're watching that, as long as we hold down here as support, I think we're going to be making another run back up to these range highs, and we can ultimately be breaking out from them inside of this next move. However, if the price were to come back down, we were to start selling below this level, then I would think we'd come back down and retest our range low being 40,500. So this is really what I'm watching for with Bitcoin. It's either one way or another, and it revolves around the mid-range. So we're going to watch the mid-range being 42,880 all the way down to about 42,400. Somewhere inside of that $400 gap is really where I think the market's going to decide whether it's going to be bullish or bearish. So I'll keep you guys updated from here. Now guys, let's talk about the altcoin that I think is going to be providing some of the biggest gains and could potentially give us a 50x return going into this next cycle. Alrighty guys, so the coin we want to talk about today is Metis. I've talked a lot about Arbitrum, I've talked a lot about Optimism, and I've talked about them because I believe the layer 2 narrative is going to be one of the more significant ones to be watching for. Every single bull run, it's a new set of altcoins that end up driving a lot of the value, and it's always those early altcoins that haven't had prior cycles that end up running the hardest. Now, you have a few outliers like Ethereum, like the ones that continue to go up in their cycles. However, the majority of your profit you're going to make, and kind of where you want to focus some position sizing, is into new altcoins that haven't had prior cycles. That's just something I think is valuable to note. Now, the reason we're talking about Metis here is because Metis is its own layer 2, and it was actually here before Optimism, and it was here before Arbitrum too. Now, with this layer 2, it's actually developed by Vitalik Buterin's mom, and she came over to Metis and actually started developing this, and so she's the main developer over there. I'm sure they have tons of them, but she's obviously one of the bigger ones over there. Vitalik actually gave this over $100 million worth of a grant. So I just think that having all of that backing, shows that these guys are legit, shows that they're having the direct ties to Ethereum. I just think that they're going to end up seeing a lot of adoption long term. Yet, this is the one that most people don't talk about. It's not listed on as many exchanges. No, most people don't know about it. Most people really don't even know about layer 2, so I'm not surprised, but I expect that that trend is going to be shifting. Now guys, when we're looking at this, I think it's important that we come over here and actually look at the chart that I drew a couple days ago, because what we're looking at here is a perfect example of a Wyckoff accumulation, and inside of these Wyckoffs, it's one of the more bullish patterns you're going to get because it ends up playing out into a very big breakout. Now, this sort of cycle, we've talked about this in one of my prior videos the other day because I mentioned this coin. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into some of the details of Metis aside from the charts, so that's kind of why I wanted to update you guys with this video today. Now, when we're looking at this, I do do believe that we're just about to make that run up to the range highs. We might see some type of correction back down in here, but I do believe that we're going to be breaking from these range highs very soon. And it makes sense considering when we're looking at the chart of this, it looks just like the total market cap for the altcoins, right? And it makes sense considering all we're doing with the total market cap is making a massive support and resistance flip, as resistance right here has now been broken and it's acting as support right here before we make a much bigger leg up. So as we're seeing the total market cap breaking out, making its first true higher high of the new cycle, what we're looking at here with Metis is, pretty much the same sort of thing. It's just lagging a little bit behind. But when the total market cap breaks out, I think that this one is surely to follow right behind it. Now, one of the cool thing about Wyckoff's is they actually follow along with the Wall Street cheat sheet too. So when we're looking at this, in my opinion, it's almost the exact same setup. I wish we could see the full chart because even this ABC is pretty much the same, which we can come over to here and look at it a little bit closer. This big sort of lower high, this big A, B, and C, this is the same sort of complacency wave that we would expect to see in the Wall Street cheat sheet, and it pretty much is the same one. We see this big lower high, that's complacency. We see this big sell-off and capitulation, and then we get capitulation, anger, and then we get this final depression. And it's the same thing, capitulation, anger, and then we get this final lower low, and that's depression right here. So all we're in right now is this disbelief phase. We're getting ready to break out of these range highs. I think that that's what's going to end up coming next. Even though we're a little ways below those, I think that the period of markup is about to set itself in. Like we talked a little bit about with Bitcoin on the shorter time frames, this thing can pull back here, and we want to end up seeing it hold the mid-range, because if we ended up coming all the way back down to retest our bottom of the range being 40,000 and a half, we might end up seeing altcoins end up bleeding a little bit more. So when it comes time to talk about Metis, we want to see this thing maintain this uptrend, and even as Bitcoin's pulled back, I mean, this thing's still holding remarkable strength. As Bitcoin makes big moves into its cycle and it starts ranging like this, that's generally where we start to see a lot of altcoins start taking off, because it's in the period of consolidation for Bitcoin that altcoins have been suppressed during this entire run up, and after Bitcoin starts consolidating is generally where all of that suppression lifts off before the altcoins end up taking off again. So that's, the way I've seen the market play out for Bitcoin, and that's kind of what I'm thinking is going to end up playing out here as long as we continue to just range inside of this channel. So as long as we're ranging, we can keep seeing the altcoins break out. It's not like just because Bitcoin is selling off, altcoins can't go up. There's always going to be random outliers that are going to outperform. We've already been seeing Injective doing that. We've seen some of the other altcoins doing that. But I think that a lot more, and the bigger majority of them, are about to be following behind. Now, when we're talking about Metis, I think it's fun to speculate on what type of ROI we could be looking at long term. And so when we're looking at this, let's go to the entire chart, and let's look at where we would be if we just went to the all-time high. We'd be looking at almost a 10x just to the all-time high, about a 9.3x. So that's a pretty significant return. Depending on where you're looking at the data, Dex Screener says it's got a market cap of 136 million. However, if you come over here and look at CoinGecko, it actually says 278, and it says that it almost has a fully diluted valuation. The total supply is only 10 million, so it's got a really small circulating supply and total supply at that, so the upside for price to climb could be really significant. So the total supply is almost entirely circulating, about 91% of that is currently circulating. And there was one person in my group that brought it to my attention that there was a wallet that had 70% of the tokens, but I do believe that that's just the staking contract, so I wouldn't really worry so much about that. Now, when we're looking at the data, I think it's a little bit better to be watching what it says over here on CoinGecko. I think it's probably more accurate. So it's almost a fully diluted valuation. There's not going to be a ton of, unlocks or anything like that to ultimately drive the price lower. I think that this is going to end up seeing a lot more upside potential moving forward into this cycle. So when we're comparing the charts and we're seeing this, if it's a 10x to the prior all-time highs, if we were to see a 50x, and assuming that the total market cap is 278 million, we would basically have to be at like 14 to 15 billion dollars in total market cap. That would give us a 50x. If we were to see a 100x over this cycle, it would have to end up topping at about 30 billion dollars in total market cap. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant increase in value. However, when we're looking at terms of like how much money could come into this cycle, we've talked extensively about this being the institutional cycle. I mean, this was valued at 330 bucks. That's a 10x. We would only need it to do another 4x out of those all-time highs to, give us that 50x return. a lot of my better returning altcoins of the last cycle, whether it was Terra Luna, whether it was Phantom, they all gave me a 20 and 40x just in their first breakouts, and I sold the majority of them at that level. However, a lot of those kept running another 100, 200x after that point. So if I would have held everything the entire way of that cycle, I would have made way more money. So it's hard to predict which cryptos are, going to end up seeing that adoption. But we're talking in terms of, Vitalik Buterin's mom, the founder of Ethereum, developing this project, having strong ties with Ethereum, being his mother, and then Vitalik also giving them an over $100 million grant to start their project. I just think that it's going to end up doing very well long term. And it's actually way more undervalued compared to Optimism and compared to Arbitrum. And so as we see both of those chains continue to take off, continue to get a lot of, people talking about them, I think that it's ultimately going to end up fueling all of the demand to come over and look for other alternatives. They're going to say, man, I missed out on Arbitrum, missed out on Optimism. What's the other one I could get into? And then that's why they're going to come over here and buy Metis. And like I said, guys, this isn't really listed on as many places. So all of that is yet to happen, and it will come very soon. When we're looking at this, it looks not only like the Wall Street cheat sheet, a perfect emotional setup where we're just inside of this disbelief phase about to start this next cycle, but it's also showing an exact symmetry to a Wyckoff accumulation as well. And inside of a Wyckoff, we're at the point where we're going to be breaking out of those range highs and starting the new cycle. So both of the charts I shared with you guys are lining up with this being, the next stage for a breakout. We also talked a little bit about the total market cap and how we're at a major support and resistance flip here. So every single thing we kind of needed to see to be bullish has happened. We're just waiting for these altcoins to kind of finish their moves. And as Bitcoin is ranging, generally when Bitcoin ranges is when we see altcoins kind of start to break out. It's once Bitcoin really takes off, altcoins will lag. Some of the outperformers will do their thing, but for the majority of time as Bitcoin's impulsing, altcoins are underperforming and lagging. And then once Bitcoin starts ranging, that's where a lot of those altcoin profits really come in and this money starts to cycle back down. So looking at Bitcoin doing the same thing, this could be the opportunity where we're about to see a lot of that money coming into some of these. And with so much money already flocking into some of the bigger layer twos, I really think that this one is going to be that dark horse candidate for a layer two that could just take people by surprise big time. Like I stated, guys, if we were to see anything going all the way up to a 10x, that's just to the prior all-time highs. And one of my favorite setups in the last cycle was just looking at altcoins that looked very obvious, like they were getting accumulated, had big accumulation cycles, good market cycles. I look for all of those things, and this has great Elliott waves. It's got great, emotional psychology lining up with the Wall Street cheat sheet. It looks like your standard example of a market cycle. It's got direct ties fundamentally to Ethereum with Vitalik's mom. That's got a narrative behind it that we want to watch. It kind of checks all of those boxes for what we're watching for. And so with this one, I've already invested a lot of money into those other layer twos, and I've been talking a lot about them. But this is that one that's like the dark horse I haven't talked about as much, and I think we're about to start breaking out in a much bigger way. So one of the final things I wanted to talk about was speculating a little bit more around the value that this thing would have to hit to get that 50x, because we talked a little bit about this, guys. If we come over here and look at our first couple cycles for the altcoins, we're going to look at the top of the cycle in 2018. Now, for Metis to hit a 50x, like I said, it has to go to $15 billion in total market cap. For it to hit 100x, it's got to go to 30, right? So we're looking at that range approximately for a 50 to 100x. That's going to be a 4 to a 5x or a 10x past the all-time highs, depending on how you're looking at it. So in the first cycle of 2017, we had $15 billion up to the 7th ranked position. So that was, we didn't really have very much money comparing it to that first cycle. Comparing it to the top of our last cycle, we had at least $15 billion until all the way down here to the rank 17th position. So it was basically double that we saw here, going from 7 going to 17. So assuming we get another doubling and we go from 17 times 2, we're going to be looking at 30 plus, 30 something like that range in there. So if we're looking at potentially the top 30, 40 altcoins having at least 14 to $15 billion in total market cap in them, I don't think that it's unlikely to see Metis actually in that top 30 stance. I definitely think it could be inside of that valuation. I believe that Optimism and Arbitrum are going to be inside of that top 15, potentially even top 10 in total market cap. And so when we're talking about what could be on the even outskirts of that, being 15 to like 30, maybe even 40, somewhere in there, I think that Metis can really fit itself in over there and get a lot more adoption long term. I don't think that a 50x is unheard of by any means. Like I stated, guys, I sold a lot of my profit in Terra Luna and Phantom at a 20 and a 40x, and I kind of regretted that just because of how much further they went up in their cycles. So for me, it's like I'm much more focused on really just trying to hold the time frames and sell based off of the times. If I'm selling off of the 4-year cycles, because we know when we're looking at Bitcoin that historically speaking, it follows these 4-year cycles perfectly. If we're looking at our exact cycle low of 2018 and our exact cycle low that we saw after the FTX collapse, it was only a month off from being exactly 1,450 days, which is 4 years on the dot. End of the year to the end of the year, it was exactly the same. So assuming that we're going to have another 4-year cycle, which up to this point it has followed exactly to, just like we've been talking about, we're following a normal 4-year cycle because we literally started a new one when we bottomed at the end of the year, right? So if we're looking at that, we've got 3 years to the upside here. We've got plenty more upside to come. I feel like it's much more accurate to sell based off of the time frames than you're ever trying to guess price or guess market cap or anything like that. Even if Metis goes to like $5 billion in total market cap and doesn't even get close to 15, I'm still going to sell based off of the time. Even if I end up missing out on a little bit of profit on the top, you still got to end up selling off of the time because I just think it's still much more accurate. The bull markets last 3 years. This one lasted about 1,070 days. If we come over and look at the 2017 cycle, it lasted about the same amount of time too. I think it maybe was even just a little bit longer than that. This one was 1,064 days, so it was actually a week shorter. But we still see the same things, right? We're looking at a little over 1,000 days during this bull run before we're at a cycle top. So from where we're at today, 1,064 days is going to be at the end of the year 2025, like we talked a lot about. We're looking at selling at the end of the year 2025, considering all over the last 10 years, Bitcoin's followed these 4-year cycles. And with us bottoming at the end of the year and completing another 4-year cycle, by default, it gives us a much more by default, it gives us a high likelihood chance of us completing a new 4-year cycle and continuing in that same trend. So now that we've completed this one, we started a new one. So if we're looking at this following roughly the same time frames, we're going to be looking at, this topping at the end of the year 2025 sometime. So I think we're better off, better prepared by taking profits on these altcoins. Looking at the end of the year 2025, which is going to be clear over here, what I'd be looking at for Metis would be pretty much this. We get this next breakout. I don't know how high it's going to go in this next breakout, but I do think that we'd end up pulling back and kind of retesting this as support. That's just generally the way the markets are going to move. They're going to make these breakouts and then they're going to fall back down and retest levels as true support. But I think that we're going to hold support. This will turn into support. And then we'll end up just seeing continuation from here. We'll probably see something like this. We'll get into the end of the year 2024, being into the year of 2025, and then that's where we're going to see the real markup in value, whatever valuations these things go to. I 100% have confidence that this thing will go into a new all-time high, and if we're talking about where we're at today, what it could be, like I stated, guys, a 50x would take us to, $15 billion in total market cap. The price would have to be $1,600. It'd be crazy, but I mean, it's not unheard of. I've seen this happen plenty of times in years past. This is now my 8th year in crypto. I have a lot of confidence going into this cycle because I really know more than ever before. And that's why, I do have confidence going into Metis because the layer 2s are something I've actually put a lot of confidence in. It's something I think is a narrative that's 100% going to blow up. So I've strategically placed myself into random different ecosystem related projects, whether it's the chain itself, whatever it is, I've positioned myself expecting that we're going to see a lot of growth in this sector. For Metis to go to this level, 50x, it's not even like it's that crazy of a market cap. 15 billion is more than doable given an institutional cycle, given a retail cycle all driven at the same time. If this truly is the crazy cycle of adoption we've always talked about, the values of these are going to be expected to get ballooned and be disproportionate versus what they truly generate in value, right? A lot of these are going to get blown out of proportion. A lot of them are going to be overvalued in the same way it happens every cycle. But where we're at right now is the beginning. It doesn't get any better, and we're about to be leaving the bear market. We just don't have much time left to be prepared, so I wanted to make this video, talk a little bit about some of the details, explain why I think that this one's going to do so well, give some thoughts as to what the chart looks like, give some predictions potentially about what the market cap would hit, what it has to hit for a 50x. I think that all of these are doable. It could even go higher than that, but at that point, like I said, guys, I'm not trying to predict the price. I'm not trying to predict the ROI. I'm trying to predict based off of the time frame. So I'm going to be selling based off the time frames. I don't care what the price is when the time frames come up. So it's just a fun video to kind of speculate on that. I still think we can do a 50x, but at the end of the day, it's just me guessing. I don't really know. That's why I'm going to sell off the time frames instead. So I just wanted to give you guys one of my dark horse picks that I think could play out in a big way. One that most people are overlooking that's about to be taking off, and I think you're going to hear a lot more about it very soon. So anyways, if you found value in this, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. If you guys do want to end up seeing how I'm investing my money over this cycle, we've been buying Metis since all the way at the beginning of 2023. At the end of the year, 2022 is when I really started to look at it. You know, it's been one of our long-term holds for a reason, being around the layer 2 narratives, and this is just one of many of our different crypto signals inside of the group. So if you wanted to look at what I'm actually positioned in, what I think has the best, what I have the most confidence long-term that will give us some of the best returns, you got to join the Discord server. You can sign up on my website, linked below in the description of this video. On my website, you can sign up. It's just a one-time payment, lifetime access. So as long as I'm running the group, as long as I'm doing YouTube, as long as I'm investing, most importantly, I'm always going to be posting all of that back inside of the Discord server. So if you guys want access to that, links are in the description. Sign up on my website, and I will end up giving you access later today. Thank you all so much. And with that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.